The alarms did not scream. That was the first sign something was very wrong. Inside ADX Florence, the most secure prison in the United States, silence was never normal. There were always sounds. Doors locking, cameras clicking, guards calling out codes, machines humming behind thick concrete walls. But that night, everything went quiet. A red warning light blinked in the control room. Then another. Then another. Screens froze. One by one, camera feeds went dark. In cell block D, an inmate stood perfectly still inside his concrete cell. He was smiling. A guard stared at the monitor in confusion. The system showed every door as locked. Every prisoner accounted for. No movement. But one tiny detail was wrong. A door deep inside the prison showed as closed, even though it was not. And inside that space, a crime was unfolding that would nearly push ADX Florence into disaster. The guard reached for the phone. The line was dead. At that exact moment, a heavy steel door slid open somewhere in the prison. No alarm sounded. That was when panic finally began. Hours earlier, the prison had entered full lockdown. ADX Florence sat alone in the mountains of Colorado, far from any city. Thick concrete walls, razor wire, armed towers. Inside were some of the most dangerous criminals in America. Men who could never be allowed to meet, never allowed to speak, never allowed to move freely. That day, a small technical issue forced the prison into restricted operations. Movement stopped. Meals were delayed. Guards were stretched thin. Most days at ADX followed the same routine. Quiet, cold, controlled. This day did not. Officer Mark Reynolds had worked at ADX for 12 years. He trusted the systems, the doors, the cameras. They never failed. Until now. When the lockdown began, Mark felt uneasy. Not afraid. Just alert. Something about the timing felt wrong. Inmate transfers had been postponed. Maintenance teams were sent home early. Fewer eyes on the floor. That was dangerous in a place like this. By nightfall, snow covered the roads outside. Communication with the outside world slowed. The prison was locked down, cut off, and alone. Inside cell block D, inmate Daniel Harper waited. Harper had a calm face. No tattoos. No shouting. He followed rules. Guards called him easy. But Harper was not easy. He watched. He listened. He counted time. He knew the prison better than many guards. He knew which doors took longer to lock, which cameras blinked before failing, which guard skipped a step when tired. And he knew tonight was different. When the power flickered, Harper stood up. The lights stayed on. But something else failed. A small internal door near the service corridor unlocked for exactly 7 seconds. 7 seconds was enough. Harper moved. In the control room, Officer Reynolds noticed the first frozen screen. Camera glitch, another guard said. They had seen it before. A reboot usually fixed it. But when Mark tried to reset the system, nothing happened. Then the second screen froze. Then the third. A red warning icon appeared. Mark's stomach tightened. Run diagnostics, he said. The system did not respond. That was impossible. ADX systems were built with backups. Then backups for the backups. Unless something had been done from the inside. Mark stood up. Lock all sections manually, he ordered. A guard reached for the panel. The panel did nothing. That was when they saw it. One internal door showed green. Unlocked. No, Mark whispered. That door was not supposed to open under any condition during lockdown. Mark grabbed his radio. Static answered him. No signal. The prison was cut off. In the corridor, Harper moved quietly. He stayed in shadows. He knew where cameras should be blind, but tonight they were blind everywhere. He reached a maintenance area used only by staff. Inside, another man waited. Inmate Paul Sanders. They were never meant to meet. Ever. ADX rules existed for one reason, separation. But now, 2 inmates stood face to face. Sanders looked scared. They said this wouldn't happen, Sanders whispered. Harper said nothing. He stepped closer. Somewhere above them, a system logged nothing. No movement. No warning. A crime does not always start with violence. Sometimes it starts with opportunity. Harper reached into his sleeve. Sanders took a step back. And then a scream echoed faintly through concrete halls. It cut off suddenly. In the control room, Mark heard something through the walls. A sound that did not belong. He turned pale. That came from D, he said. Another guard shook his head. Impossible. No one can move. Mark did not answer. He grabbed his vest and ran. 2 other guards followed. They moved through halls lit by emergency lights. Doors that should have been sealed showed no alerts. That scared Mark more than alarms ever could. When they reached the corridor, they saw something that made them stop. A body lay on the floor. Paul Sanders. Not moving. Mark knelt beside him. Sanders was alive. Barely. There were marks on his neck. "Where is Harper?" Mark asked. Sanders could not speak. Mark looked down the corridor. One door stood open, and inside that space, the system still showed locked. Mark realized the truth. Someone had planned this. This was not a glitch. This was a crime. And it was not over. Deep inside ADX Florence, emergency protocols began to fail. Doors refused to respond. Cameras stayed dark. Radios stayed silent. One inmate had moved. One crime had already happened. And now, the prison stood one mistake away from complete disaster. Mark turned to his team. "Find Harper," he said. But even as he spoke, another alarm light blinked red somewhere else in the prison. Then another. Whatever Harper had started was spreading. And ADX Florence was no longer in control. The first emergency alarm finally screamed through ADX Florence. It was loud. Sharp. Wrong. Red lights flashed along the concrete halls. Doors tried to lock at once. Some closed. Some did not. Officer Mark Reynolds felt the floor vibrate under his boots as heavy steel doors slammed shut in different sections of the prison. The system was fighting itself. The prison was no longer quiet. ADX Florence was built to stay silent. Now it sounded alive. Metal doors groaned as they tried to lock again. Some slammed shut. Some stayed open just a few inches. That few inches was dangerous. Officer Mark Reynolds ran down the corridor with two other guards behind him. Their boots hit the floor hard. Every sound echoed. The red lights kept flashing. Over and over. Like the prison was warning itself. In Control Room B, Officer Linda Chavez stared at the screens. Her hands shook as she typed commands into the system. Door seals were failing in 3 units. 3. That should never happen. She tried to override the system again. Nothing. Then one screen changed. A cell camera went black. Linda froze. That camera was not supposed to go offline. It was one of the most watched cells in the prison. She zoomed in on the next camera. The inmate was standing. That alone was strange. Most inmates stayed still when alarms sounded. They knew better. This one did not. He stood close to the door. Too close. The steel door to his cell was not fully locked. A thin line of darkness showed between the door and the frame. The inmate raised his head slowly. He looked straight at the camera. Then he smiled. Linda felt cold all over. She grabbed the radio. "All units, we have partial door failure in Alpha Wing. Repeat. Partial door failure." Mark heard it as he reached the corner of the hallway. Alpha Wing. That was the worst place for this to happen. He slowed down. His hand tightened on his baton. His heart beat fast in his chest. The lights flickered once. Then again. For half a second, everything went dark. When the lights came back on, Mark saw something that made his stomach drop. A door down the hall was open. Not cracked. Open. The inmate inside stepped forward into the hallway. The man was calm. Too calm. He looked around like he had been waiting for this moment. Mark raised his radio to call it in. Before he could speak, another alarm blared. A deeper alarm. One that meant the prison was losing control. And then, from somewhere far down the corridor, a second cell door opened. Then a third. ADX Florence was no longer sealed. And the worst part was this. The system still thought everything was under control. The control room shook as another alarm joined the noise. It was louder. Slower. More serious. Linda Chavez knew that sound. Every officer did. It meant the prison's automated safety system was no longer reliable. She swallowed hard and forced her hands to move. She pulled up the master map of ADX Florence. The screen filled with red and yellow warnings. Alpha Wing was blinking red. 2 more cameras went dark. Linda called out to the supervisor standing behind her. Her voice cracked. "We're losing visibility. Doors are responding late. Some aren't responding at all." The supervisor leaned in, eyes wide. That shouldn't be possible. But it was happening. Down in the hallway, Mark Reynolds backed up slowly. The inmate who had stepped out of his cell did not rush. He did not shout. He just stood there, breathing slowly. Another door clicked behind Mark. He turned his head. An inmate from the opposite side of the corridor was now free too. 2 inmates. Same hallway. This had never happened before. Mark raised his baton higher. His voice stayed calm, even though fear pressed into his chest. "Step back." Get on the ground. The inmates did not move. They looked at each other. Then one of them laughed. It was soft, almost friendly. The lights flickered again. Over the radio, Mark heard shouting. Not just alarms now. Real voices. Other units were reporting doors unlocking out of sequence. The prison was supposed to control movement down to the second. Now it was guessing. In the underground maintenance tunnel, a small team of technicians ran toward the power junctions. Their flashlights cut through the dark. Sweat soaked their uniforms. One of them, Brian Walker, skidded to a stop in front of panel 17. The panel door was already open. That was wrong. Who accessed this? He asked. No one answered. The wires inside looked untouched at first glance. But then Brian saw it. A small device. Hidden behind the panel. It was not prison equipment. It blinked once. Then twice. Brian's mouth went dry. This isn't a malfunction, he whispered. This was done on purpose. Above ground, the system tried to reset itself. And failed. The computer believed doors were closed when they were not. It believed inmates were locked down when they were standing free. Control room B was full of shouting now. Linda slammed her palm on the desk. We need a full lockdown. The supervisor shook his head. If we do that now, we could trap officers in the wrong zones. That was the nightmare. Lock the wrong doors, and guards would be alone with inmates who were never meant to see each other. Mark Reynolds took one slow step back. The inmates took one step forward. The hallway felt smaller, tighter. He could hear boots running somewhere behind him. Backup was coming, but not fast enough. The inmate who had smiled earlier spoke quietly. Door wasn't supposed to open tonight. Mark did not answer. Another light flickered out. The hallway was now half dark. Suddenly, a door slammed shut behind Mark. He spun around. The system had sealed the corridor entrance. Mark was trapped. 2 inmates. 1 officer. He felt his pulse in his ears. In control room B, Linda screamed for help as the map updated. Mark Reynolds' icon turned yellow, then red. That meant an officer was isolated. She grabbed the radio again. Mark, respond. Are you secure? Static answered her. The maintenance team ripped the device from panel 17. The alarms changed tone again. Some doors slammed shut with violent force. Others stayed open. The prison was fighting itself. In Alpha Wing, 1 inmate suddenly dropped to the floor as his cell door slammed back into place, trapping his arm for a moment before releasing it. He screamed. The sound echoed. Fear spread fast. Another inmate ran. That was worse than shouting. Mark used the moment. He lunged forward, striking 1 inmate's arm with his baton. The man stumbled back, shocked more than hurt. The second inmate moved toward Mark. Then, without warning, the lights came back on fully. The hallway doors unlocked at once. Backup officers flooded in. The inmates froze. The moment was over. But the damage was not. Hours later, ADX Florence was silent again. Too silent. Inmates were secured. Officers were accounted for. No one had escaped. On paper, it looked like a success. But everyone knew better. Linda sat alone in the control room, staring at the replay footage. Someone had planned this. Someone had tested the prison. The hidden device had only disrupted systems for minutes. Minutes were almost enough. The supervisor entered quietly. This never goes public, he said. Linda looked up. Why? Because if people learn how close we came, he said slowly, they'll know it can happen again. Weeks later, repairs were finished. New safeguards were added. More cameras. More locks. More rules. But one thing could not be fixed. Trust. Mark Reynolds still dreamed about the hallway. About the smile. About the doors that listened to no one. And deep inside ADX Florence, in a sealed evidence locker, sat the device pulled from panel 17. No one ever found out who placed it there. No one ever proved how it got past security. All they knew was this. That night, ADX Florence came closer to disaster than anyone would ever admit. And the prison would never truly feel secure again. Months passed, but the night never left the prison. New officers arrived. Old ones transferred out. Every shift began with the same warning. Watch the doors. Trust nothing. Linda Chavez moved to a different control room. Smaller. Quieter. She checked the system logs every night. Nothing unusual appeared. That worried her more than alarms. Because the device found in panel 17 was never claimed. No fingerprints. No camera footage. No record of entry. It was as if it had always been there. One night, at 2:11 a.m., a system test failed. Just one. Linda stared at the screen. The error corrected itself in less than a second. But she logged it anyway. In Alpha Wing, inmates felt the change. Guards spoke less. Movements were slower. Meals were delayed by minutes that felt like hours. One inmate, Daniel Price, stopped eating. He sat on his bed and stared at his door. Every night. A guard noticed. Price is acting strange, he reported. Mental Health reviewed the file. Nothing wrong on paper. But Daniel whispered to himself. Doors remember, he said. No one understood what he meant. A surprise audit arrived from Washington. Officials walked the halls with clipboards and calm faces. They praised the upgrades. They asked careful questions. But one question was never answered. How did the device enter the prison? No one knew. Or no one spoke. That night, after the inspectors left, the system rebooted itself. Unscheduled. Unrequested. All doors stayed locked. But the reboot lasted 12 seconds longer than normal. 12 seconds too long. Mark Reynolds returned to duty after medical leave. He was thinner now. Quieter. He paused in Alpha Wing longer than required. His hand hovered near his radio at all times. On his first night back, he heard a soft click behind him. He turned fast. Nothing. Door sealed. Green light steady. But his heart did not slow. Because he knew the sound. It was the same click that came before everything went wrong. In the evidence locker, the device was moved. No report logged it. No camera showed it. It was placed on a metal shelf, far from the light. That same night, a power fluctuation rolled through the prison. Lights dimmed. Came back. One door on level C unlocked for half a second. No inmate moved. But the system recorded it. Then erased the record. ADX Florence stood strong in the daylight. Concrete. Steel. Silence. The safest prison in America. But deep inside, something had changed. The prison had learned something. And so had the people inside it. That control could slip. That one mistake was enough. And that next time, the doors might not close again. Winter came hard to Colorado. Snow pressed against the walls of ADX Florence. The prison looked frozen. Silent. Perfect. Inside, the system logs showed small gaps. Milliseconds with no data. Too small to trigger alarms. Too clean to be accidents. Linda Chavez started sleeping in the control room during long shifts. Coffee cups stacked near her console. At 3:04 a.m., she saw it again. A door status blinked gray. Not open. Not closed. Unknown. Then it vanished. The warden ordered a quiet review. No reports. No outside agencies. Only trusted staff. They traced the system back line by line. Every path ended at the same place. Panel 17. The panel that should have never failed. When they opened it, the device was gone. No wires cut. No damage. Just empty space. Security footage from that night was requested. 6 cameras showed static for exactly 8 seconds. 8 seconds across different wings. Impossible timing. The footage returned afterward like nothing happened. No one moved. No doors opened. But something had passed through unseen. Daniel Price screamed at 2:22 a.m. Not loud. Sharp. Guards rushed in. He was standing inches from his door. Smiling. The door breathed, he said. Medical took him away. His cell was sealed. That door never reported a lock status again. A new protocol was added. Manual checks every hour. No reliance on the system alone. Guards walked longer routes. Feet echoed louder. The prison felt awake now. Watching itself. Mark Reynolds noticed something wrong with his radio. A faint click before every transmission. The same click. He changed radios. The sound stayed. Then one night, the radio spoke without being keyed. Just one word. Open. Power tests were scheduled. Backup generators fired perfectly. Except one. Generator C hesitated. Half a second delay. Enough time for doors to unlock if timed right. The system said everything was normal. No one believed it anymore. A guard failed to report for duty. His car was found in the lot. Engine cold. Door open. No signs of struggle. Inside the prison, one hallway camera recorded motion. No person visible. Just a shadow moving against the wall. The warden requested federal oversight. The request was denied. ADX Florence was listed as stable. That word felt dangerous now. At 1:58 a.m., alarms did not sound. Lights did not flash. But 12 doors unlocked in sequence. One by one. Perfect timing. Then they locked again. The system erased the event. Linda watched it happen live. She screamed for help. Too late. Emergency lockdown was called manually. Steel slammed shut. Inmates were secured. Counts matched. No one missing. No one escaped. But something had tested the prison. And it had succeeded. The device was found again. This time inside a wall. Behind concrete. Embedded like it belonged there. No fingerprints. No serial number. Just quiet humming. They shut it down. The humming did not stop. That night, every clock inside ADX Florence reset to the same time. 2:11 a.m. The exact minute the first door failed months ago. Mark Reynolds resigned. Linda requested transfer. The warden aged 10 years overnight. Reports were sealed. Classified. Buried. The public never heard the truth. ADX Florence still stands. Locked. Guarded. Silent. But every door now closes slower. Just enough to notice. Just enough to remember. Because once, control almost slipped. And next time, the prison may not get a warning.